The Sonic.exe Spirit of Hell Round 1 mod just dropped, and in this video, I want to give you the full backstory of this mod, including the game that it actually came from, and I also want to give you some facts about each of the characters that we get to see pop up in the mod. Now, a lot of you may not know this, but the Sonic.exe mod that we see here is actually based off the game called Spirits of Hell and its sequel called Sally.exe Whisper of Souls. Now, Spirit of Hell specifically was actually released back in June 18, 2018, and the sequel was released in 2021. And if you've already played through the mod, you may find it interesting that there's actually choices or different endings depending on if you win or lose a rap battle, and that is because it's directly based on the game. Basically, as you were playing through the game, you could do like a choose your own adventure type thing where you could choose one of two options, and if you chose wrong, your player would just be straight up unalived.
Two switches. Which one should I press?
And this Friday Night Funkin' mod does a good job of keeping the spirit of the original game because you can have different endings depending on how you actually perform. Now, the backstory of this mod and the actual story itself is quite interesting. Now, this is technically Sonic.exe that we see here, but more specifically, it's a version of Sonic's called Exler. And in the original game, we actually get to see him possess Sonic and basically take over his heart and soul. Now, people who are familiar with the original Sonic.exe knows that he isn't a demon and he doesn't possess people, he's his own entity. Now, Exler is a bit different because he actually belongs to a group of creatures called the Highest, and they're basically immortal cosmic entities. Now, to say that in a different way, they're basically like otherworldly angels. And as some of you may know from like old stories and lore, and even some popular Hollywood movies, it's been said that angels that fall from grace or fallen angels basically become demons, and we all know that demons can possess people. Everyone has seen movies like The Exorcist or of course the original Exorcist. So it stands to reason now that Exler has fallen from grace and has embraced this new evil way of life, he will be able to actually possess Sonic. And as if it isn't bad enough that he's immortal and he also has the power to possess people, he also has the ability to create different dimensions, alternate realities, and planets, as well as erase anything from existence. Exler also has ridiculous physical power, which isn't really necessary because Sonic was already very powerful, and with his speed attached to that, he was already like a very much killing machine if he wanted to be. But Exler also gives him like a aura that makes regular people feel like their temperature is increasing, and it makes them feel as if they're in a state of panic. And some people hear this idea that like your temperature rising isn't that big of a deal or isn't that bad, but if your brain gets to a certain temperature, like your whole body basically shuts down, right? Like you can't literally handle it. So Exler's whole kit, his whole makeup is basically to torment people and just shut down their body and their mind. Now, some of you may be asking why Exler is evil and why is he over here attacking the Mobians? And basically in his past, one of his best friends ended up being corrupted and ended up dying. And once she passed away, he basically lost his mind in a sense, and he wanted to go down to the Mobian universe and basically just wipe everybody out. Now, that situation does go a little bit deeper, but I think that basically lets you know why he's doing this. Now, interestingly enough, in the actual Friday Night Funkin' mod, we see that Tails is the first opponent that you have, and that's because in the actual game, Tails is the first person that actually appears in Green Hill when he's looking for Sonic. And this is because once Sonic gets possessed, he doesn't come back to Tails like he was supposed to. Now, we all know that Tails and Sonic are best friends, so once Tails figures out that Sonic may be in some type of trouble, he goes out looking for him. The scary part here, though, is as Tails is looking for Sonic, he notices that a lot of the wildlife is now dead. And when he finally sees Sonic, he notices that his gloves are covered in blood. Now, as a player, you obviously know that something is wrong here, but Tails is supposed to be like a young person in the actual game, so he has a choice. Do you follow Sonic or do you run away? Now, if you choose to follow Sonic, he'll literally take Tails to the plane that he flew in on, and he will put him into the propeller. It's brutal. But if you choose to fly away, you can actually save Tails. And that's one of the things that I like about the original game is that you have the option. You can try to save everybody, or if you're kind of sadistic, you can kind of see how everybody meets their demise. Now, the next person that we see in this mod is Knuckles, and that's because he's the second opponent of Sonic.exe in the original game. And his choice is kind of interesting because once you get to these panels, there's like a green one and a red one, and if you choose the wrong one, you're basically crushed. And I say this is interesting because you don't actually know which one is the right one. You just have a 50-50 chance of surviving. And it's basically all luck. So it's a coin flip to basically save his life or not. And next in the Friday Night Funkin' mod, you see that we run into Metal Sonic and then Dr. Robotnik. And that's because they are the next opponents that actually pop up in the original game. Now, what's interesting about Dr. Robotnik here is that he understands that Sonic is not himself immediately, and he knows that he needs to get away. So Dr. Robotnik actually sends his robots to fight against Sonic.exe to kind of slow him down. But what's interesting here is that if you send your strongest robot, aka Metal Sonic, to fight against Sonic.exe, he loses, and then Sonic.exe actually gets to unalive Dr. Eggman. Now, funny enough, if you send your weaker robots, they hold him off long enough for you to actually get to the escape pod, and then Metal Sonic is able to hold him off longer while you actually escape. Either way it goes though, Metal Sonic doesn't survive that outcome. That's why in the mod we actually see Sonic.exe holding Metal Sonic's head. Now, a character that you all may be familiar with that pops up in the original game and in the mod is Tails Doll. For those of you that don't know, Tails Doll was basically like a Metal Sonic type of creature. It was basically a version of Tails that was made to take out the original Tails. And he's basically a demonic robotic version of Tails that will rip anybody apart if Dr. Eggman requires it. The funny thing here though is that in the mod and in the original game, this version of Tails doesn't actually play a role in fighting against this version of Sonic.exe. If we're being honest, I don't think it would have really made a difference because obviously if Metal Sonic couldn't beat him, this version of Tails is not going to be able to do it either, but I still would have thought that Dr. Eggman would have at least sent him out there to help him fight. Now, some people are curious as to why Sonic.exe gets huge in this mod, and that's because it's based directly off the game. If you manage to keep Tails, Knuckles, and Dr. Eggman alive for a while, you basically get to a scene where you have to fight against this giant version of Sonic.exe because he's hell-bent on at least killing one of the 3 people here. In the original game, they each have their own little trial that they have to go through. You see Dr. Robotnik has to basically fly away from him, Knuckles actually fights him, and Tails actually fights him as well, but he has like a little jet plane to kind of help him. In the original game, it wasn't super challenging, but it was kind of cool just to kind of see the fight scene. Now, the saddest part about this is that there are some areas in the original game where Sonic actually gets his sanity back and he tries to warn his friends. And if they don't heed his warnings, or if they just choose wrong, it ends up at the bad ending, and we get to see that in this mod. We get to see that Tails turns into Tails.exe, Knuckles gets to turn into Knuckles.exe, and of course Dr. Eggman turns into his EXE version as well. And in the worst ending here, we even get to see the spirit of Sonic, which basically means you just completely bombed. Now, there are a couple of joke characters in the mod as well. We get to see that Majin Sonic makes an appearance where he actually fights against Sonic.exe, and we also get to see another version of Sonic called Sonic.iso, which I'm pretty sure is like a fan-made Sonic. If I'm not mistaken, he popped up on Luigi Kid's channel. He actually played through the entire game. He didn't like it very much, but it was a good effort. And I also want to mention that since this is just round 1, we know that there's going to be more added to this mod because we know that Sally actually gets to turn into an EXE, and of course Cream also appears in the next part of the story as well. So next time this mod updates, we'll probably have more characters to actually talk about. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this video on the screen here, subscribe today to become a member of the Ors Force, and for my people who made it to the end of the video, I'm currently working on another YouTube channel where I read all the creepypastas that we've covered on this channel. Basically, I know a lot of people want to know the full stories of some of these creepypastas, so I think that should live on another channel. Let me know if that's something that you'll be interested in, and I'll go ahead and start making those videos. That way, when I actually release the channel, it'll be all ready to go, and there'll be 10 or 15 videos already for you to listen to. I figure it can be something that you can have on in the background while you're doing homework, or maybe you're on a drive or doing some big commute, or if you're just up late one night and you want something scary to listen to. Let me know your thoughts, and thank you for watching as always, people. We'll see you tomorrow with another one. Peace, peace.